Hey Panthers, congratulations! You made it to the end of the week. Here are some announcements. The National Honor Society is hosting its annual Toys for Tots drive. To participate, you can drop off new toys worth $10 or more, or gift cards worth $10 or more, to the front office. The drive ends November 4th. With the perpetual talk of voter fraud in the media during recent months, Michael looked into the history of voter fraud and suppression in the U.S.
Hey Panthers, there are a lot of conflicting things being said about this election. With this in mind, I thought it was a good idea to look at the history of American elections and whether or not rampant voter suppression and fraud could exist to the level in which some people believe it will in our modern election.
The period of greatest voter fraud was probably between the Civil War and the onset of the Progressive Era in the early 20th century, where political machines, especially in the big cities, would round up votes and supervise voting.
There are some time periods, particularly in the late 1800s in New York, where voting could definitely be considered fraudulent and was. But for the most part, and especially in terms of like a presidential election, there just doesn't seem to be evidence to support that.
While voter fraud may not have been a major deal in past presidential elections, the same cannot be said about voter suppression.
The biggest voting suppression that we have seen probably is disenfranchisement of entire classes of people.
The time period after the Civil War, when African American men, through the 15th Amendment, were given the right to vote, was a period where we saw introduced things like literacy tests, grandfather clauses, and other means of preventing people from voting.
Though laws preventing people of certain races from voting do not seem to be a threat for this election, one thing that is bothering some people is whether or not the mail-in ballot system is causing fraudulent votes to be cast.
I think there are people who will maybe question the system, but I think overall, more people will participate and feel that their vote meant something.
We've seen unprecedented levels of people voting early. In part, that could be because the pandemic is necessitating that. But also, it could be because people are super energized about, a change in the national government.
Historically speaking, there is nothing to indicate that there has been voter suppression or fraud on a large scale, so bet on nothing changing anytime soon. Reporting for PTV, I'm Michael Gromnick.
A select handful of classes will be piloting out in-person learning in the coming weeks. If one of your classes was selected, you should have received an email in your Learn account. This is entirely optional, and students who decide to not return in person yet will still be able to fully participate over Zoom. GSA is collecting new pairs of socks to distribute to homeless LGBTQ+ youth at the Los Angeles LGBT Center for Socktober. You can drop off your donations at the marked box in front of the school. The event ends November 20th. If you have any questions, contact Ms. Lemieux at lemieux@conejousd.org. Panthers, remember to check your Learn accounts every Friday for the student newsletter. There you can find announcements about upcoming events, club info, and other happenings at the school. Sean Connery's recent passing was truly tragic. Here's Angel with a look at the legacy he leaves behind.
In a year that has been filled with so many losses, last week we lost another legend, Sean Connery. Best known for his portrayal of James Bond, Connery died peacefully in his sleep last Saturday at the age of 90. Born on August 25, 1930 in Edinburgh, Scotland, Connery's acting career spanned 7 decades with roles in movies such as James Bond, Highlander, The Hunt for Red October, and one of my personal favorites, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Connery made his stage debut in 1953 with the chorus of the British touring company of the musical South Pacific, and then made his film debut 2 years later in the British movie Lilacs in the Spring. Throughout Connery's accomplished acting career, Connery won several awards, including being nominated for 6 Golden Globe Awards and winning 3 of those, and also won an Oscar for his performance in the 1987 film The Untouchables. In addition to being one of the most recognizable actors, Connery was knighted in July of 2000 by Britain's Queen Elizabeth II. That is all that I have for you today. Now, back to Grant.
That's all for today. Have a great weekend, Panthers.